And hello, everybody. It is the Dark Conservatarian, and yes, I am back with the stream finally at long last. Yeah, it has been like a 2 week hiatus and then some time of actually trying to get up to speed on things. And like I said, I won't hardly be doing the news streams anymore, but I'll be keeping up with the guest interview streams. And today I have with me AircraftSparky. Introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm your boy AircraftSparky here, and every Wednesday night you can catch me on my channel, youtube.com/AircraftSparky, where you will see Thursday night streams on Wednesday nights. It happens at 9 p.m. CST, where we talk about usually the week's shitstorm of news, the dumpster fire that is the world, and, well, we take a piss out of everything.
All right. I'm still trying to get the stream to actually present on my phone, but I'll send you the link as soon as possible. But what got you interested in wanting to talk about politics, particularly at your age, I guess? No offense in that point.
Oh, at my age, because I'm just so old. Yes. No, seriously, what started it was about a 16-year military career where I dove into things like intelligence and whatnot. And during my time being deployed all over the world, going to multiple war zones and doing the job that we did, up to and including, um, I'm part of the crew that identified North Korea having nuclear arms. Um,
Hmm.
I really started to get into politics because, well, I was a pawn, and I wanted to. The more I learned about politics, the more I realized how military was being manipulated for political gain, and so it kind of got my attention there, and well, it just continued. As I got out, I'm like, okay, well, it's time to call out the bullshit
How the
because
mil- how the
I
mil-
could do that.
If I may ask for clarification on that point, how the military was being used for political gain, uh, describe that. Would you call yourself a non-interventionist on that point then?
Oh, by no means whatsoever. I fully
Oh,
support intervention when needed. The problem is what I determine what is necessary may differ from others. I am not one of those liberal hippies that are going to sit there and say, "Make love, not war," because no, war sometimes is needed. So it truly depends on the situation. Like if you're looking at what's going on in Syria right now, our intervention in Syria is needed. What's going on with Iran currently? Well, my opinion isn't fully vetted there yet. I do realize that some of what's going on um, in Iran actually needs to be addressed, but it's neither here nor there.
what do you mean that it's needed in Syria more specifically? Because that is like just a powder keg waiting to happen. I mean, a lot of the times Trump gets taken some actions that would, quite frankly, piss off the Russians to the point it would almost bring us to the brink of war and ultimately World War III. And I don't see. I ultimately don't see the real resourceful or humanitarian need or as to how the Assad regime specifically affected us in any direct way, especially in the harm of human lives to our citizens and whatnot, or even our
Well,
military men.
what you're looking at is you're
To,
looking
to
at the
where
very
that we need
surface.
to where
You're
that we
you're
need
not
to
even
to where we
you're
need to
not even
let me clarify to where we need to be involved long term anyways, but sorry, go on.
you're not even addressing the actual things that are going on right there. Um, the fuck the Russians. First of all, no one gives two squirts of piss about what the Russians want or
I agree, fuck the
whatever
Russians.
in that situation. But when it comes to Syria, what's going on right now is there's two competing pipelines that are being built. One is being built from the UAE, the other one is being built from Iran, and that is exactly what's going on with Syria right now. Um, the reason why the Russians are so involved with Syria is because they are supporting the Iranian oil pipeline that is being built through Iran to go to Europe. Well, UAE and Qatar is actually building a pipeline right now to Europe as well. And basically, Europe doesn't care who they get their oil from. They just want to make sure they have a decent supply of oil that can't just be cut off from one source. Because currently they're highly dependent on Russian fuels, and when Russia gets a little upset, they close off the pipeline. Russia's just looking at, well, Iran is an ally of ours, and so they're supporting the pipeline for Iran, so Iran can actually get some money because currently their citizenry is starving, and a lot of bad things going on because of the sanctions. And the U.S. has an interest in that because they don't want the Iranian pipeline built, because then that would make the sanctions that we have on them moot. And so that's really what it boils down to.
Well,
America is trying to get Iran back into the fold of the world, and Russia's kind of pushing. No, we want to keep them as our own allies completely. It's a proxy war.
I mean, I agree. Fuck the Russians. I don't care about the Russians, but I care about our own good and our own citizens. Like, is it worth like risking war to where millions of our own people, well, more specifically, thousands of our own troops and plausibly even millions of our own people die, getting into an area of the world of where we are that close to war with Russia. And by extension, I say fuck the Iranians as well. I don't care about them. But is it worth risking war with them as well? Unless they actually like started firing back at us. And now I did hear about the whole drone situation, but I'm not in so much agreement of going to war with Iran over a single drone. Now, if like dozens of our own troops died, then yeah, I could agree retaliate in some form, but a single drone, not really.
Well, I support Trump deciding to call off the strike last minute because he didn't want the loss of life in Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Because human life does not equal loss of equipment. Um, but all at the same time, you shot it at U.S. equipment, and that is an act of war. Um, so I'm a little conflicted. That's why I haven't fully made up my mind yet
Yeah, I
on
mean,
Iran. But the reason why we intervened with Syria honestly had everything to do with the use of chemical weapons. Someone has to enforce international law. No one else will. For some reason, it always ends up to the U.S. To do it. So when it came to the idea of missile strikes in Syria, I fully supported that because people were being targeted with nerve agent.
you know, that one specific attack that happened in 2017, um, I don't so much like the way that Trump went about with that. Like he put forth an executive order to go ahead and strike the Sharat, I think it was called Sharat airfield, the air base in Syria uh, under the Assad regime. Um, I agree with that, and the fact that they killed their own citizens and our own troops were like in the line of fire or within range, more specifically, of them chemical weapons possibly being used on our boys. But yeah, I mean, I am more or less in somewhat agreement of that. I just don't like the way that he approached it, though. But when it comes to Russia or Iran, did they shoot at us first, or do we have any suspicion that they might immediately shoot at us?
Well, Iran, they have shot. They've shot down two drones so far to date, as of the recent past 3 weeks. We lost a Predator style drone, and we lost an RQ-4 style drone. Both of them, meh. I don't think we should go to war over it. However, what is going to happen is we're going to end up going to war with Iran if we like it or not. Um, Iran is probably going to push for their proxies in Yemen to launch more cruise missiles like they did last week in Saudi Arabia. Um, this time, I think they may actually shoot more towards UAE. Once that happens, the powder keg is lit, and we're going to be in World War III.
I mean, why do are we mandated to go to war if they fought the UAE?
Well, all CENTCOM operates out of UAE.
CENTCOM?
Yeah,
Want to clarify that for me?
Central
Because I'm
Command.
uh
That is where all Middle Eastern operations are based out
Oh, all right.
of.
You're talking about
So
our central command,
yes, yes,
our own. Okay. I
yes.
do not know if you might have been talking about something that is more specifically ran by the UAE, or if it's
No,
ran by
no.
us. Just we're allies with UAE,
The
and that's
U.S.
something what we have there.
military is essentially, part of the reason why I separated is the central U.S. military is essentially a protective force for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, UAE, and others because they do not have a military to really do it themselves. So they pay the U.S. military as almost like a mercenary force to protect them. And so, where CENTCOM is actually based out of Tampa, Florida, the actual infield command post is in UAE. He sounds like a neocon. No, not really a neocon, but okay.
Okay, so I don't know. I disagree with the idea of us having this unholy alliance with Saudi Arabia. But to clarify on the whole neocon point, what is your opinion on, say, the Iraq War, for example, the one that was under Bush Jr., not the Gulf War, but under
Uh,
Bush Sr.,
okay.
but you
I
know which
was
one I'm
I was
talking about.
part of that war. I fully supported it at the time, and not for the reasons that a lot of people thought. Um, there
But
were
looking
weapons.
back on it, what do you think of it now?
There were weapons of mass destruction found. It's something that is not really talked about all that much because it still said property of the United States on it. In the 1970s, the U.S. sold lots of mustard gas and nerve agents to Iraq because they were in the what is called the 10 Years War with Iran at the time. We were the ones that supported Iraq, and we actually helped build them up to fight against the mullahs because we were angry at Iran with everything that was going on. So we sold all this stuff. We already knew that Saddam Hussein had biological and chemical weapons, mainly because we sold a good bit of them to them, and he used them on their people. Well, pardon me. Following the Gulf War One, um,
But
George.
if I
Hmm,
may add, I don't think would mustard gas be technically considered a weapon of mass destruction
yes,
in the same way of
it
uranium
is.
or nukes?
Yeah, it's not the exact same way, but no, it's considered a weapon of mass destruction because it's an illegal weapon. It's a chemical weapon,
Uh-huh.
and chemical weapons are not legal on an international level. Um,
I knew that
yes,
it.
we did create uh, an enemy in Iraq. Uh, Majority of the monsters in the world, the U.S. has actually put up. I mean, Osama bin Laden was trained by U.S. Army Green Berets to fight the Russians. Um,
Mm-hmm.
every monster that has existed in the 21st century, it pretty much has American black ops behind them. So it's occasionally the puppets get out of control, and got to put them in their place. But when it comes to Iraq too, basically I supported it at the time because I was tired of my sisters and brothers. We were constantly deployed on doing something called Northern and Southern Watch, and this was a campaign that lasted about 14 years. It was a quiet war that no one really paid attention to, but people were dying, not daily, but I mean, American soldiers and airmen were being shot at a constant basis during this war. And well, I thought it was time to end it, so I fully supported the invasion in Iraq. And now, where I have the issues with the Iraqi war was not the initial going into as much as how we ended it or
Right.
lack thereof. It was completely mismanaged.
Coming out
And
at a time that would have left a power vacuum, ultimately that ended up with that power vacuum being filled by ISIS, for example.
yeah, and well, it was people like Obama who said, "Hey, we need to get these people out of Iraq." And we don't give a damn what happens. And so people like me, Barack Hussein Obama, actually created Iraq, ISIS. Yeah, it's completely terrible. Um, what happened there? It was predictable, and know-it-alls like um, the token president, Barack Hussein Obama. ignored that and, well, paid for it. And a lot of U.S. soldiers paid for it. It's kind of sad.
Now, what I will say in one of your earlier points is that I don't know if this is for sure true or not because of the kind of shoddy sourcing that I have about this. It's more of hearsay from Rick Santorum, so you know of how. So to you, Sparky, and to you, audience, you know of how kind of loose I am getting this information. But essentially, around 2006, the midterm elections back then, there was WMDs found by the administration, by the Pentagon, and so forth. But at the time, Bush and I cannot remember his name, but he was like the chair of the RNC at the same time. At the time, was it Karl Rove? I think it might have been Karl. I think it might have been Karl Rove
Karl Rove.
or
Karl Rove
someone
was
like that.
the
Or but
was
what I
lead
was trying to
strategist.
what I was trying to
strategist.
right, he was a strategist, and so the point that I was trying to get at is that at this point, the establishment Republicans were trying to say just leave the WMDs as is, even though that they have ultimately found them. Like, yeah, I mean, if there were really WMDs found, and yet ultimately did not come out with the truth about them, assuming this is true, by the way, audience, you should have come out about it, because if you did not come out
They
about
should
it,
have.
which they didn't,
There was actually
ultimately
a
they would have
CNN.
thought they would have just had their thoughts reassured. All the
There was
anti, you
there was
know,
actually a
never mind.
CNN report.
Go on.
It's been scrubbed, but I remember watching them film it, where we had a cache of chemical weapons that we found stashed from a Iraqi army post ammo dump. And the problem was is they still said property of the U.S. on it. They never re-stenciled. Um, so that was kind of it, and it wasn't. They weren't talking about finding WMDs. They said that they found a the CNN story actually said that we found a cache of U.S. weapons. Well, they didn't understand what those weapons were, what those canisters were. They were canisters of mustard gas, and it was in the backdrop. Those were the WMDs that were being sought, but it looked more like it it looked bad on America, so they never informed they never informed the journalists what they were standing in front of. So it's kind of an interesting thing, and it was really a complete clusterfuck when it comes down to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So, unless there was something else you wanted to say, an extension on that part, I thought we'd get on to the main subject of this
right
stream.
on.
Yeah. So, one of the main things that prompted me to want to have this stream in the first place is the whole issue of pedophilia in the LGBT community that first got brought up by, well, actually it was first by you, but then it was extended by Humane Mind back in February, and that's when that we decided that we were going to cut ties with Humane, and it wasn't just the claims that he was making, it was how he was handling them, how he was like basically alienating, acting like a douchebag, and just kind of uh, telling lies about us at one point. Like he said that supposedly I and the other people in that group were accusing him of pedophilia, when really, no, that wasn't the case, dude. Like, for crying out loud. I mean, I'd probably have Humane Mind on for a discussion about this, but he'd probably refuse because he's, I don't know, he's weak like that, as he'd be talking shit behind my back about me to other people.
Mm.
But I thought maybe AircraftSparky would have a little bit more skin in the game on this. So,
Well, I mean that's the
espouse your opinions on this rather controversial matter.
uh, I don't see any controversy in it when it comes to mainstream media covering of
Well,
LGBT. When it comes to the mainstream media's coverage of the LGBT community and their pushing of wanton sexualization of children, I I don't see where it's controversial at all to say
I do think that
pedophilia
talking
is considered
about
to be part of the LGBT community.
I do think that talking about pedophilia in general, and specifically who is in support of pedophilia and who is a pedophile, is kind of a little bit of a controversial issue. It's not like controversial like as much as economics and what economic principle one should have. Well, actually, it's far more controversial than that issue. Don't know if I worded that right, but yeah.
Mm.
Nonetheless, though, and I guess I want to like clarify this before we go on any further. I think I might know the answer to this because I think I've heard you say it yourself, but you don't believe in any laws, instituting any laws about sexuality, do you? I mean, aside
No,
from banning bestiality and
no.
pedophilia.
Whatever consenting adults do, I have no issues with. Um, you do you. You keep that to yourself, just like I keep what I do sexually to myself. If you're bragging, that means you just don't get it enough. That's just my opinion. I What people do in the privacy of their own home is their thing. I don't think that same-sex marriage should be illegal or anything like that. But all at the same time, yeah, if a coworker goes, "Oh, well, this is my husband," and it's a dude, I'm like, "Oh, cool, nice to meet you."
Hmm.
I'm not worried about catching the gay or anything stupid like that. Um, it's it's just, hey, some things are meant to be private, and that's fine.
Hmm.
But when it comes to pedophilia and the LGBTQ, I mean, you're seeing TED Talks being given now talking about how pedophilia needs to be accepted as a mental disorder and how it should not be stigmatized, and just as long as they don't act on their impulses, it's completely fine. And no, see, the problem that I see with the LGBT community is the fact that they allow ABC to put Desmond is Amazing um, on television,
Stripping in a
stripping
gay
him,
bar.
and no one, and they're like, oh, it's so brave and beautiful. No, it's fucking disgusting. Okay, the problem with the LGBT community is the fact that everything is acceptable, therefore they're complicit.
I will
If you
admit.
were, if you're going to sit there, if you want to go the hashtag not all, okay, well, if you are one of the members of the LGBT community and you're not raising utter hell every time they show a lactation, Desmond is amazing, or any other drag queen kid that is just a child being sexualized, you're complicit, and that P stands for pedophilia.
Or to some people, it stands for pansexuality, which they.
Pansexuality is not a thing.
Okay, well, we can like debate the semantics between bisexuality or pansexuality, but I don't really care about that. But what was I going to mention? Yeah, I will admit that Desmond or any other young kid in general stripping at a bar, that is clearly sexual, and if there are like grown adults throwing dollars at them, there is definitely implications of sexual lust after that person, just or even sexual actions for that matter. So that is pretty pedophilic right there.
Yeah,
But
and the fact that it's acceptable is the problem.
here's my thing though. The LGBT community. When anybody goes saying LGBT community, the implication that everybody gets is that they're talking about the whole community, like everybody that falls under lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or whatever else have you, that people will be throwing in that numerous infinity initials community,
Well, for mistake,
just like in the same way that if somebody was to say the black community, they don't just mean the Al Sharptons, the Jesse Jacksons of the world. They mean like typically all black people, including average Joe black people. So when you or Humane or anyone else goes saying that the LGBT community like supports pedophilia, it's like you're saying as a general statement, both the average Joe LGBT person and the mainstream LGBT figure support or even outright are pedophiles. That's where I disagree with you at. Go
okay,
on.
and that's fine. But if the mainstream media is actually pushing it, and there is no pushback from quote unquote Joe Average LGBT member, then you are Joe Average complicit. It's not a. I don't even know why that would be controversial at all. Sure, you could say hashtag not all, but let's be honest. Um, Everything else is acceptable. in the LGBT community. If
Mm,
everything else is acceptable, then nothing
mm,
is. No, and so you could go because there's a couple people that say no. There is not a large backlash, and that is the problem when the mainstream is pushing that this is considered acceptable. When the HuffPo is sitting there putting out articles talking about how children should be exploited, how children should be pushed in front of gay pride parades, which let's just be honest, have turned into nothing but kink fest because they're trying to freak out the normies. Um, and they're like, oh yeah, it's completely acceptable to bring kids in a highly sexualized area, and they should just accept it. No, that is sexualization of children, and the LGBT community is complicit. It doesn't matter if they are not a very well unified community. They never have. They don't belong as a unified community because honestly, lesbian problems are not trans people problems, are not bisexual problems, are not gay problems, are not asexual problems,
I
are
will
not any
say,
other. It's they are a loosely
if I
unified group based solely on the fact that they don't have sex in what is considered to be the natural way, the biological feasible way.
if I may add, the fact that they're even getting into these pride parades, that is a little bit on edge and just edges towards the immorality. But if like, oh, 1 second.
Yeah, give me a moment. I have to. My dog walked into the room. Give me a moment. Sorry about that. Looks like we both took a break at the same time. Lol. Anyway, to prevent dead air, let me go ahead and address people in the comment section here. Hey, Tasteless Opinion, how you doing? Pumpkin Rose, Scorch88, Vector Crow. Let's see, and Brandon Paget. Let me see if there's anything that I can actually address here while I'm here. Um, Tasteless Opinion. Well, Zach, this guy has a point. They are trying to normalize pedophiles. I fully agree. Vector Crow. I'm not for the LGBT Pride Fest, but I will support marriage equality for everyone, only for adults. Hey, nothing wrong with that. This guy seems pretty G community. Yeah, I'm not that controversial. At least I don't think I am. But some people
All
in the
right, I'm
LGBT
back.
community may think that I'm a little bit extreme. Um, yeah, I was.
Here's my question though, for you to be like justifying such a generalization. Do you have any polls that show how much of how many gay, lesbian, bisexual slash trans people, how many of them actually support pedophilia?
No, I don't have to, because all I have to do is look at mainstream journalism and their actions and how the quote LGBTQ community responds to it. Their lack of response is complicity.
You are. This is anecdotal though. All
No,
these
it
cases
isn't.
right here.
What is not anecdotal is the fact that when you see TED Talks being done about it and the LGBT community just go, meh. When you
Anecdote.
see HuffPo, when you see ABC parading children around as sexual objects, and the LGBT community goes, meh, this isn't anecdotal. It is showing that everything is acceptable, including pedophilia. Hey, guess what? Bestiality should probably be part of the LGBT community too.
This no. Sorry, I'm not convinced as to whether or not pulling these single individuals, these single examples, is not anecdotal. That's what I have
When
always
you have
understood. That's
the
what I've.
problem,
Hey,
the
this is what I've always understood to be the definition of anecdotal right here. But statistics, not so much. And until somebody is able to like pull a say statistics on approval of this
would
shit.
you would you point
I
to
do not
a
see.
study?
Wait. I do not see the justification for generalization, much less any method to get me or my colleagues to agree on that generalization.
Okay, well, your colleagues, lol. Okay, can you point to one academic source? No, you can't. Where they have polled the LGBT community to see if they actually agree or don't agree? No, you can't,
Well,
because
no,
they haven't done it, because these
the
studies have
burden of
not been
proof is
done.
on you.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it
Okay,
is. I mean, you're the one that is claiming that they support pedophilia. I mean, here's my methodology: innocent until proven guilty. And when it comes to like the LGBT community as a general community supporting pedophilia, innocent until proven guilty. They are innocent of supporting pedophilia until they're proven guilty of supporting pedophilia.
until they stand up against the
So
mainstream narrative, until you actually see people going, no, this is not how we are, and this is not representative of our community, which you do not see against the ABC, the
I've
Ox,
seen.
HuffPo. No, having one or two people on Twitter. No, I'm talking about people as a community, a broader sense. When you see more than one or two
Yeah,
people,
let's
no, this is wrong, and
it,
I'm part of the LGBT. You do not espouse my opinion as the LGBT. You got to see more than one or two. When you see the overall LGBT community as a whole just go meh and let it go, that's showing complicity.
yeah,
I am not.
let's ignore them anecdotes on Twitter and YouTube of LGBT people condemning pedophilia, but only look at the anecdotes in the mainstream of LGBT
Because
people
the mainstream is all that
condoning it.
counts. The mainstream is all that counts.
The mainstream is all that counts.
Yeah. What do you think?
I don't
Do
really
you
think
think?
so. Like,
Well, I mean, do you really think that
if
YouTube
say,
reached enough people to constitute its majority? I would say no.
well,
Would you
again,
say that about
I
Twitter
would
as well? I would say no.
I would say that the burden of proof is on the people like claiming that they are guilty of supporting pedophilia.
I'd say prove me wrong. Good luck. When you have
This
Ariana
is gonna
Huffington,
well, the only way that I can, well, okay, for one thing, I do not have any stats on either way of support of
because they don't
pedophilia.
exist, is what I'm saying.
What
Those stats don't exist because there hasn't been academic
exactly?
research done on it, because it cannot get past the approval portion. And so, no, you can't say, "Oh, well, no, it doesn't exist because there's no my statistics." You're going with a fucking TYT version of proof. So go ahead and chug you some
No,
bacon grease and call yourself Chink. I mean,
no, I'm just saying that they're innocent.
support.
I'm just saying that they're innocent until
No,
proven
they're not.
guilty.
This is not a
Yes.
court of law, motherfucker.
What the heck?
This is not a court of law. This is a public optics thing. Just like Brett Kavanaugh, this is a public optics thing. It's not, if it's not in a courtroom, they're not innocent until proven guilty.
And
It's
if
a
Kev,
court of public opinion. And Kavanaugh was done wrong.
what?
And the Me Too movement, honestly, is nothing more than a weapon.
Even like the Me Too movement, for example, would not be proof of like, I don't know. I'm going from talking about sexuality to talking about feminism. I would say even that all these mainstream Me Too feminist figures are not proof that third wave feminists, even as a generality, definitely just want to like hang Brett Kavanaugh by his toenails just because of a flimsy, baseless, non-backed accusation of rape,
Yeah,
or
and
even three.
now you have this most recent allegation by what's her name, some woman that just published a book claiming that Trump raped her in a Dillard's store in a dressing room or whatever. Okay, the Me Too movement has been completely weaponized to try to defame people. Look at things like Duke Lacrosse, Mattress Girl. Uh, yeah, the court of public opinion does not give anyone the idea of innocent until proven guilty. In the court of public opinion, the LGBTQ AAIP word salad alphabet soup, in my opinion, supports pedophilia. Now, when the mainstream media keeps pushing that narrative constantly, it's not wrong.
Let's
Do you
say
see what
if
I'm saying?
let's see if Fox like promoted one thing, would that be representative of the Republican voting base and what they support?
Fox is nothing more than a mouthpiece for the RNC, and they're no different than MSNBC is for the DNC. Okay,
Okay, let's
but when I'm looking at when I'm looking at ABC, Vox, HuffPo, when I'm looking at all these mainstream leftist organizations constantly pushing things like child sexuality is completely fine, and now you even have TED Talks, the PED Talks going on, and this is something that they are trying to mainstream. And as far as where does pedophiles belong? Well, I honestly believe they probably belong about 6 feet under, with concrete poured on top of them. Hey, they could be dead when you put them in there or not.
Mhm.
It's not really my, because I think they're sick fucks. But when you look at where do they belong in a community, well, the LGBT community is the only natural choice of where they could go, because the LGBT community is nothing more than a
um
word salad of every type of sexuality there is, and they are actually selling pedophilia as a sexuality.
LGBT community is the only place that they can go, except for the LGBT people that disagree with that kind of lifestyle.
Well, see, and my my whole deal is, if the LGBT community does not represent you as a quote unquote member, I don't care if you're gay, straight, or whatever, you do you. But there's nothing wrong with going, hey, I'm not part of the LGBT community because they don't represent my values. It doesn't matter if you're gay, straight, bi, trans, uh, the imaginary pan, or asexual, or whatever. It's or even the dragonkin. They don't have to be part of the LGBT community. And the fact that people still identify
That
themselves with
is
a community that actually allows supporting things like pedophilia, that should make you, if you don't go, no, this doesn't represent me, and walk away from it, you're complicit.
well, that is a technicality. Is some gay people like Rational Outlaw, for example, who doesn't technically consider himself LGBT, a part of the LGBT community, but I am he's still a gay man. Like when a person in general says LGBT community, I still think of like just anybody who is lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans, and whatever. And I will say that a lot of the mainstream LGBT representatives, a good portion of them, anyways, I do not know if it's a majority or whatever, seem complicit towards the idea or even promoting of the idea. But the idea that they all, as a whole, in a generality, support this thing is ridiculous to me. And my point is, until you can like get some approval polls about it, because here's the thing. I mean, people like generalize black people, for example, of being supporting of Democrats. I mean, there are actual polls or voting results to actually somewhat back up that generalization, and that about 80 to 90% of them vote Democrat. I mean, that is somewhat justified. But the idea that the LGBT community, like as a whole, generally speaking, supports pedophilia, it seems ridiculous to me until you until you like get a citation needed, as Crusader said.
Okay, well, citation needed that they don't.
What?
You can't. See, you can't even hold yourself to
Citation
the same
needed that
standard
what?
that they don't.
That they don't?
Yeah. You see how that goes? See, it goes both ways. There are no studies
Not
saying,
really.
saying one way or the other. No, just because you have a couple of friends, no, it doesn't mean. Yeah, you got a black friend too. You're not racist. Come on, man.
I mean, I'm not really
I,
sure of
I,
what way they
I,
exactly support it. I'm just assuming innocent until
the
proven
fact,
guilty.
the fact that there is not that much pushback, there is not any pushback from the quote LGBT community, from virulent activists. Your huge LGBT activists. You don't see them standing up against these mainstream media stories.
I mean,
It's basically showing complicity. If you say nothing, you are complicit.
how many dozens or hundreds of people actually have to get like audio recordings or written down interviews of them condemning pedophilia to convince you that LGBT people do not, as a generality, support pedophilia?
Um, More than what exists today.
All
Because
right then,
there
whatever,
truly
dude.
is none. There are no huge activists. I mean, even ContraPoints won't
Even
even touch a
ContraPoints
subject. Won't even touch a subject.
won't
Okay.
touch a subject. I'll have
The
to
only
look up that or something.
the only person who I saw actually said that LGBT does not have anything to do with pedophilia is Blair White. Well, most of the
Okay.
LGBT community hates Blair White. So do you really accept what she says? Uh, you've got
I'm
to.
sure that they at least agree with her on that point.
They might, but a lot of people in the leftist sphere tend to have this whole groupthink mentality because they're all trying to be part of a collective. And well, it could be,
Mm,
fake tranny bad, as they would probably call her.
collectivism is not inherent on just the left.
I know it isn't, but you see more individualism on the right than what you do on the left.
I will say that the philosophy, generally speaking, is more individualistic than the left. Like especially when it comes to economics, like you get when I'm going there. Whereas it's more collective with the left. Like we all need to pool in together our resources for welfare, for example. But as far as people as thinking individuals and what they approve of and whatnot, who they follow and so forth, collectivism, that cult of personality mentality, it is in multiple camps on both the left and right. Like, for example, I'd say that for a good portion of Trump supporters during the heat of the 2016 um, primaries, there was a bit of a cult of personality around Trump. Perhaps around Cruz as well, but I did not see it as prominent around Cruz or uh, other Republican nominees.
Yeah, I was huge. I was a huge Cruz supporter during the primaries in 2016. I
Okay.
honestly did not. And there's some things about Trump I don't like today, but I support Trump because, well, I'll support Trump over anyone, especially named Hillary or anyone currently running for the DNC because they're all pretty much NPCs.
Hmm. Okay. So I don't know if we have much more to go on that point. Like, I'm of the innocent until proven guilty mentality. You're of the guilty until proven innocent mentality because of the anecdotes as far as their support of pedophilia.
Well, I'm more along the lines of in the court of public opinion, even though I tend to want to believe the whole innocent until proven guilty. The actual truth of the matter is that does not exist in the court of public opinion. So you can say you buy into that, but I mean, if you're on Twitter, if you automatically don't come to if you want to sit there and go, oh well, I don't think Roy Moore did this. Uh, well, it turns out he's kind of a creepy guy, and I don't think he actually conducted any pedophilia, but I do believe he did some creepy stuff. But everyone wants to go, well, he's a pedophile immediately because, well, he did some creepy shit. Uh, yeah, the innocent until proven guilty does not exist in the court of public opinion. So I'm not going to give that benefit to anyone because it's not given.
As far as the court of public opinion goes, I mean, it's not like we are necessarily sentencing people to jail for
No, but lives
anything
have been
unless
ruined.
they've committed an action. I mean, it's not the same as like a court
Untrue.
of law.
Untrue.
But
Look at the Covington kids. Look at the Covington
but
kids. Look at Kyle Khrushchev. Look at the Duke Lacrosse kids. The Duke Lacrosse guys are still trying to get jobs because their lives were ruined over a false accusation of rape. If you want to say that their lives aren't affected because of the court of public opinion, you're a fucking fool.
I'm trying to apply this more to law than anything. I mean, people will have their own opinions.
Public opinion has nothing to do with law, though. When I see lives ruined over mere accusations, and people go, "Oh, this is
I
completely
think
fine," as the world burns around them.
I think we're getting like courts of public opinion kind of mixed up. Like you're talking about courts of public opinion as far as like business people's opinion of individuals of the Dukes lacrosse or whatever group that you mentioned there.
Hmm.
But I'm talking about court of public opinion as far as generalizing a whole group. Like you're talking about people's opinion of other people. I'm talking about people's opinion on a certain subject.
Okay.
Um, okay, never mind. I have like people debating in my chat now, and I would like to thank everybody for participating right here. Pumpkin Road, James Schultz, the Tasteless Opinion, Crusader, Red Feather, you just joined in, Dead Horse, how y'all doing? Um, and like I said, I don't think we're gonna get much further in that, but yeah. So, I guess the next subject that I'll ask about is you mentioned in like an interview that you had with S-Man or a debate or whatever. When it comes to immigration and the wall, like you mentioned something about it being fiscally conservative, supposedly to go ahead and build the wall. Like I can see the theory behind that, in that if you build the wall now, in the long term, it will save the U.S. money from financial expenses of illegal immigrants. But like, is there like, I guess my question to you on that more specifically, do you have a study on that? Like, how many years will it be for the wall to pay off in that area?
No, but as someone who has worked in security, who understands how security works, you have to have physical barriers in order for everything else to operate efficiently. The reason why you have walls is the same reason why you have walls in your home, is to prevent the outside from coming in. Now, if you want to talk about saving money, well, with a wall you would have less personnel having to be hired to maintain your actual inflow of immigration. When then you can incorporate technology in order to move personnel over to where it needs to go to intercept those trying to um, go around your obstacles. But you have to have that physical security there. The wall is not a bad idea. In the long run, it will save money because honestly, for some reason, the American public is completely fine with giving welfare money to those who are here illegally. I think that's completely stupid.
But in how long would that pay off?
Let's see. Currently, the, people are claiming that there's about 11 million to 13 million illegal immigrants. Let's just say that 40% of them are on welfare, and it's probably a much higher percentage than that. I mean, I could say possibly in 5 years it would be making money compared to our current spending levels when it comes to welfare and whatnot. But I don't know. I mean, it truly
Okay.
depends on what they call the cost of the wall to be. There's haven't been any hard numbers put out on what the wall is going to cost overall.
I can't
However, I
remember.
I can sit there and tell you that currently we are spending tons of money and people are still getting through. Over 100,000 people have been detained for entering illegally in the past, what, month and a half? And they're only catching, I think they say like 15 to 30% max. So, how many people are getting through illegally and not being captured and detained? That's an issue. And now everyone wants to go, oh, it's concentration camps. No, these are not concentration camps. Um, but these are
Well,
people
okay. We'll
who are
we'll, we'll
willfully.
take the concentration camps talking point a little bit later because I heard about AOC's Instagram feed on that.
Yeah, she's an idiot.
But I'd agree. But what was it, like 50 million or billion or whatever to pay for the
It's in the
wall?
billions. It's in the billions. I know,
Okay.
I
Well, I
know. Lord Emperor Trump wanted. I think he said something around the terms of 25 billion, but I think honestly he's lowballing, and it's probably going to be more around 50 billion. To if you wanted to build a wall from sea to shining sea.
Okay, well, or from Gulf to ocean in this case.
Yeah.
But it pretty much pays for itself in the first year or so, says Very
Okay.
Dead Horse. So if I was to like, I mean,
Crusader
do
says
you
those
agree that?
illegals overstay their visas, which honestly, to a point, he is correct. But in the past year, the illegal crossings over our southern border has increased like 300 fold. That number that's coming from a like 20, that's like a 2008 talking point. It may have changed. I'm not certain.
And the next question is how many people overstaying their visas are taking welfare versus people who just jump the border taking welfare. Like the wall
Well,
would only affect those people jumping the border and
you're
taking
right.
welfare.
You're right. Those coming over the southern border would be the only people that are
Whereas
affected by
the
and those who are overstaying visas. Honestly, that needs to be
yeah,
curtailed
that
too.
that that wouldn't be affected by the
That
wall.
needs to be curtailed too. But you know what? We could actually take all those ICE agents that we have, and instead of sticking them on the southern border, we can actually allow them to travel around the U.S. and track down these
So
illegals that overstay their visa, so we can deport them the
so
fuck out too.
if I may like rewind the conversation a little bit, Dead Horse said it pretty much pays for itself in the first year or so. Do you agree with Dead
No,
Horse on that point?
no, that's too soon.
Yeah, I think it's too soon as well because I
Uh,
don't think whatever illegal immigrants are taking welfare that doesn't add up to over 50 billion.
No, no, I actually have to go for more than just technology and personnel. You have to have those physical barriers. Without it, you don't have security.
Wait.
You have a
I just realized that OBS disconnected for a split second there. Um, yeah, what
now, and I'll do the whole illegal immigration thing on something that other people will have not thought about. Let's think about those who are pro illegal immigration. Are you an anti-vaxxer? If you are if you are pro open borders, you are essentially an anti vaxxer because one of the requirements for immigration over to the United States is that you must have certain specific vaccines. Now, South American countries are not known for their vaccine program. So, everyone that you have coming across the southern border, these are people who are unchecked, unverified as having their vaccinations. So, if you're one of those people, well, anti-vaxxers are horrible people. Well, guess what? You're a horrible person too because you're supporting the anti-vaxxer movement
well,
of illegal.
that
No,
seems
it
kind of hyperbolic, but I get the point. I get the point that they are essentially being that they're inadvertently allowing unvaxxed people to just roam free in the U.S., but they aren't technically anti-vaxxing. I would say they're just approaching that and that in combination of the immigration issue incorrectly to where it is ending up with unvaxxed people.
well, okay. A lot of the sanctuary cities are starting to come down with diseases that have not existed in decades.
No. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you on that point. I just am trying to say that it seems kind of hyperbolic language to say that the left is outright anti-vaxxer if they are like pro open borders.
If you're pro open borders, you are anti-vax because part of the immigration process is vaccines. That is part of the
Okay,
clarifying problem.
okay.
I mean, you could go, oh, well, no, they support vaccines. Yes, but you don't support immigrants being vaccinated. You
And by
gotta
the way, just to address Pumpkin Row very quickly, even if this derp lord had a point, anti-vaxxer doesn't mean anything. The government shouldn't be able to force something into your body regardless. Yeah, I mean, I overall agree that the government shouldn't enforce it. I mean, if they want to take the vaccines, well, then let them take the vaccines. But
I
an
have no
ultimatum of
problem with people refusing to vaccinate. The only thing that I have issues with those who don't vaccinate is your children. If your children aren't vaccinated, I don't believe they should be in public schools.
if they aren't vaccinated, it
Yeah,
shouldn't be in
they're
public
not. If they're
schools.
not vaccinated, they should be. They should have to be homeschooled.
I think that might be somewhat of the same opinion as S-Man. And then by extension, private schools can have their own subjective policies
Yeah,
on whether or not allowing kids who are unvaccinated there or not.
yeah. I mean, a lot of people. I look at. I look at those the families who say, "Oh well, I don't want a vaccine. I don't want my children to get this vaccine because of more reasons."
I will
That's
say
fine. I believe that you have the choice to do that, but because of that choice, you lose certain public accommodations because of that. Because if you're going to risk the general public because of your decision, well, then there should be consequences to that decision.
I will say to Pumpkin Row, by the way, that by principle, I definitely do agree with the idea of there not being public schools, but I haven't researched enough to actually hold a solid opinion and on the effect of privatizing all schools. But back up to a dead horse, just to address you verbally. DarkCon, illegal immigration costs the U.S. taxpayer between 113 and 135 billion between local, state, and federal. The physical barrier would cost about 15 to 25 billion. That's annually, by the way. And I would say dead horse if you could like cite me some statistics on that to me, DM it to me on Twitter and whatnot. That would help back up your point, and then ultimately I can tell it to other people as well. Um, and also, by the way, 113 to 135 billion versus 15 to 25 billion. I mean, even if we were to like split that bigger number in half, like because the wall would only affect like the people that are just jumping the border as opposed to people overstaying their visas, that's still more money saved than money spent on the wall, I will say. But was there a further point that you were wanting to give, Sparky?
No, I mean, I just
That point.
I just look at when you're talking about things like border security, it's a multi-pronged approach. You cannot sit there and
Mm-hmm.
go, technology alone is going to save the day, personnel alone is going to save the day. No, you have to have physical barriers. And the idea of a wall is to bottleneck entry points to where people can come through so the technology and the personnel can work more efficiently.
Okay, so one point that I just remembered that I want to ask and bring up is do you agree with the Milton Friedman school of thought on immigration in that he pretty much thinks that, you know, that freaking. Immigration should just be allowed like open borders if we completely got rid of the welfare state. But if you have a welfare state, then he seems a little bit more tolerant of the idea of border enforcement. Do you agree with that? That if there was absolutely no welfare in the country, that open borders is okay, or no?
No, open borders is never okay. In order for a nation to exist, you must have a national identity. You must have
Or I guess not. I guess not completely open borders. Like, say, for example, Mexico was to send up their army towards us. Well, then that would be where the enforcement of the borders would be. But I'm just talking about
then
the
you're just
average
picking
Joe
and choosing.
immigration.
But see, then you're just picking and choosing. You're basically going, no, I'm going to enforce only these rules and these certain implications. No, it has to be all or
No,
none.
I'm talking about whether what laws should be repealed or not.
No
Like
laws should be repealed when it comes to immigration.
what?
In fact, we should have more laws for immigration,
No laws should be repealed.
not for immigration. No,
Would you make immigration a bit cheaper?
no.
No. Well, okay, whether or not they should be repealed or not, I'm talking about for if we got rid of welfare. If we did get rid of welfare entirely, then the laws, some reform should happen to immigration to make it far more lenient.
I believe
I'm
that
somewhat
currently,
I'm empathetic to the Milton Friedman school of thought when it comes to immigration.
I'm not empathetic to anyone outside of my country. I mean, but I'm kind of
Yeah,
a
I mean,
hardcore nationalist when it comes to that kind of stuff. I'm lucky to have been born in America, but my family immigrated here years ago, and they did it the legal way. Um, those checks exist today for reasons, usually because a person's background is quite telling to kind of explain where they're going to go in the future. If you have no education and you're a grown ass adult, you don't need to come to America because now you're going to be suckling on the teat of America. We're not here to
If there
hand
is a
things
welfare
out.
system.
But honestly, even without a welfare system, it doesn't matter because you don't need to be bringing people who are going to be a detriment to your
No,
society.
you mentioned suckling the teat of the U.S., and I said that would be if there is a welfare system, they would be suckling the teat. Otherwise, if there's only existing, say,
Even
the
if there is,
police force, that isn't much of suckling the teat on a day to day basis,
even if there
taxpayer
isn't,
dollar.
even if there isn't a welfare system, you would still have people who would be burdened on the community through means of charity or whatnot. If you can't get a job, you're going to get
And
hurt.
and I
I
think
mean,
private
and we as
individuals
people,
and I
we
think
as
private
people do not just
individuals
let people die starving. We just don't do that.
and I think private individuals, if they want to have their own money, give money or give food to somebody who's visiting or even illegally immigrating into the United States, that there shouldn't be much of a law or concern or any legislative agenda on that manner.
No,
I mean, what?
I yeah, Pumpkin Row. If you're on this plot of land with the blessing of my Lord and Savior government, no, that's not really it. I'm okay with you. You're better than everyone else. No, I just look at it as I'm American by birth. I have a right to this land. Those who are not American do not have a right to this land, and they should have to only be allowed into this land under certain merit-based criteria. We do not need people who are not going to contribute. In New Zealand, you cannot enter as a other country national there. You cannot immigrate there unless you meet certain educational goals. I see nothing wrong with that. That is not a bad idea to have. The idea of immigration is to bring in people who would be beneficial to America, not just everybody and their cousin. It is nonsensical to bring in people who offer nothing.
Hmm.
Do you hire a person for a job that can't read? Well, I mean, if part of the job is reading, no, they don't meet the requirements.
I mean,
And
if
I'm not
there's
saying, and I'm not even saying something along the lines of like with New Zealand, you have to have at least a master's level degree in order to immigrate there.
let me
I'm
say
suggesting
something.
something like a trade.
I want to say something to that point. Say if somebody did immigrate into the U.S. and we had absolutely no welfare state and they didn't know how to read and that person didn't ultimately did not get hired anyway. Ultimately, their immigration would have been kind of a moot point because they would have ultimately died.
Well, and see now, and there lies a choice, and that's where I think he would end up
And then
being
the street
beneficial.
cleaners and then the street cleaners would come by and like bury the body.
But the world is not that cold, and you know that. Okay, I give money to charity and stuff, and I would rather ensure that my charitable contributions go to our own problems. America has a shit ton of homeless people right now.
With
I
the
would rather us help Americans than to help non-Americans who
I
honestly are skirting the system.
I just want to add that with the rhetorical situation I was bringing up there of the person who can't read immigrating into the United States and the welfare system was abolished, I wasn't counting in whether or not a private individual would, out of the charity of their heart, like feed that illiterate person or not.
And that's what I think would happen because I mean individual charities will step up and try to help those in need. I actually fully support that.
Those
But all
illiterate
at the same,
people I'm rhetorically
yeah,
talking about.
yes, but all at the same time, I think that could go more towards I don't know helping the enormous vet population that
I
is
just want
homeless
to
and everything
address.
else.
I just want to say to the chat, Pumpkin Row, it's not charitable if it's being extorted from you. The government is not and never has been entitled to your property, money included. I think you might be a little bit behind the conversation because we're not even like talking about if there exists a welfare system. We're talking about if there doesn't exist a welfare system in the United States, that people will be, yes, charitable to needy people. All right. So, um, I don't know if we have anything more to talk about that. One of the things that you and I kind of butted heads over, I guess we'll bring this up as the next subject, is Internet Bill of Rights and whether or not the government should like take a bigger stance in, in privately owned internet companies and websites and whatnot.
Okay.
What's your opinion on that and the Internet Bill of Rights and so forth?
I
Guess
don't
we'll
really
start there.
know. I don't really know about how an Internet Bill of Rights would look, but I do know that under the current social media platform regulation that we have under the Communication Acts, currently companies like Google, Facebook, Twitter, they all they all benefit from Section 230 of the Communication Act, which basically states that if you are a platform, you cannot be held liable for things that are said on your platform. But if you are a publisher, you can be. So what's happening right now is the idea behind social media, as it was brought up, was that it should be something more like the phone company, where it's more of a utility to where the social media platforms are not held responsible for what is said via their communication lines. Like if you're sitting there planning a robbery over the phone, you can't sue the phone company for the robbery that ensues. The same idea supposedly comes over through social media. The problem is that now social media is starting to take an editorial stance where they are starting to I wouldn't say censor, but they are regulating the amount of speech that can be done based on arbitrary guidelines. So um, I don't know if an Internet Bill of Rights is really the right idea as much as there's a current bill that is being looked at. It's an anti censorship bill that would require every 6 months a social media company undergo a form of an audit. And it found that they are regulating speech based on political guidelines and not just strictly U.S. law. Then they lose their anonymity, they lose their lack of liability for what is being said on their platform. They become a publisher and they can be liable for what is said. And to a point, I think that's fair. Where and then a lot of people's like, oh, my private company. Well, phone companies are private companies. I believe that social media should be treated more as a utility, not necessarily as a right of oh, everyone should be able. Because no, if you can't afford to pay your internet service provider, I don't believe you have a right to those people's product. But at the same time, I believe that social media should be treated more as a platform, like what you would see a phone company be held to, rather than a publisher, like what you would see coming across, I don't know, HBO, um, the New York Times, the Washington Post. They can be held liable for the views that they actually espouse. And I think that's a fair compromise. If you want to sit there and claim that you are a free speech platform, then you need to have free speech. And that includes the imaginary term called hate speech,
Hmm.
because hate speech is such a subjective idea that currently, right now, as a
I agree with that idea, by the way. Hate speech being subjective. And now, at first, you were talking about the legal issue behind communications and, the internet platforms and so forth. And it seemed like that you were talking about contradictions and inconsistencies in the laws and how we apply our laws when it comes to these internet websites. But ultimately, I'm more talking about I'm asking you what is your opinion like? What do you think by principle we should do? Not basing any opinion off of what is currently law, but
I,
do you?
I believe that currently YouTube, Twitter, and everything should be held to the same guidelines under 230. So if you are going to censor someone based on what they consider to be hate speech, you have now lost your platform, um, your your credibility as a platform, and you are now a publisher. And so you can censor or block people or ban people however you want, but now you can be held liable for what is being said on your forum. If you are not going to ban or
On
kick
this
people
point,
off for things like hate speech, okay, if you're following the letter of the Constitution and what is legally considered speech, legal speech, if you're not banning based, you're going, oh well, this person said the N word. Well, we don't like that, but hey, they can say it, and we're not going to ban them. Okay, you're a platform. If you want to,
on this point, I don't really care for whether or not a website is a publisher or a platform. The
you
difference is
should
in
though.
semantics of it all.
That's not a semantic
What
thing.
what
That's a big thing
what
because
I care more for is whether or not people in their private property should be allowed to do what they want with it. That being kick anyone off that they want to.
okay, then AT&T can now cut you off because
Cut
of
off
your
my internet service.
no, cut off your internet service, your telephone. That is what you're saying.
I mean, that
So
is
now
kind
you're
of
going. So now you're going to allow
that
the phone
is kind
company
of
to your.
somewhat my opinion.
So you're completely fine with the phone company listening to every one of your conversations.
Not necessarily, but I
Well,
would try to
that's
find
what
for a
has to
different
happen.
competitor in that area.
That's what has to happen in order for that to happen. Okay, you cannot have it both ways.
What
That is
I
what.
cannot look for a different competitor in the
No, no, no.
phone industry.
You can't sit there and claim that you are a platform and editorialize because now you're not a platform, you're a publisher. Those are legal definitions. You can't have it both ways. You can't be a publisher and a platform. A platform is like a telephone, a publisher is like uh, a network.
Well, no. Okay. Do you think that both a phone company and an internet platform should do what they want with their private property and service?
It depends on what they are. If you are a platform, no. If you are a publisher, yes. That is the true difference. What are you?
If you go talking about like okay, in that case, should a town hall? I mean, technically, that could be considered a platform. Should they be able to kick anyone out that they want to from speaking? Like allow or disallow people from entering the building in the first place, and even like in the middle of their speeches, should they be allowed to kick off those people? Private. We're talking about like I'm not talking about public property. I'm talking about like a privately owned hall or something like that
Yeah,
for speaking events.
but they're not platforms. That's the difference. Okay, I believe that the internet should be treated as a utility.
It's technically they are a platform, just they work in a different sort of way. It's not like you can like fit millions of people into a building, whereas a website you could like fit millions and upon millions of people on that website. But aside from that, it's still kind of the same principle. I see it.
Okay, let me address something in chat. Pumpkin Row, legal definitions is an appeal to authority, which is a weak ass argument. Well, guess what, Pumpkin
And I
Row?
kind of
We're a country of laws, and that's not an appeal to authority. That is just talking about how the real world works. Now, if you don't like that, you can go, you can go make free Kukistan, the Ville wherever you want to outside of
I
the
think you
U.S.
mean
But if you're under U.S. jurisdiction, the law happens to be an actual legitimate thing,
well
and you have to follow it.
we should base like laws off of morals, not morals off of law.
No, laws should be devoid of morality.
What?
Yes, because you cannot sit there and make everything a moral stance. Laws are amoral. They are not all based on moral stances because morality is subjective.
There are some morals that are subjective, but things like murder and rape and stuff like that. I think that those are rather objective. Like currently standing within the United States and most of the modern world, anyways, and even a good portion of the third world, it's not allowed. People will still try to hide their own rapes and whatnot. But
Slavery is still considered norm over a lot of part of the world.
okay,
So,
I will give
like,
that point.
and rape is considered to be acceptable under specific conditions, even under the great and glorious inclusive religion of Islam. So, no, let's keep the moral fagging out of it, and let's just go with what is culturally sound. That's what our laws is. Our laws are generally based off of cultural norms, which aren't necessarily moral.
Let's say something, for example, like discriminating against and denying service based off of a person's color. Say I own a restaurant or whatever, and I don't want to serve you or anyone else. Say person one wants to discriminate and deny service from somebody because they're black or whatever. I mean, should that be banned as it kind of currently is because of the 1964? I think that's the right one, anyways. Civil Rights Act. Should
Yeah,
that be kept illegal?
I don't have any problem with that. I don't believe that you
Being
should
kept
be
illegal?
able. I don't believe that you should be able to discriminate based on any physical characteristic of skin color or anything like that. No, I think that's stupid. But
Well, that's their private property. I believe that that law
so
in that
you're fine
aspect
with that.
is a violation of private property,
So you're completely
private
fine with
property rights. Sorry,
it. Okay.
what?
So you're completely fine with it, is what you're saying.
I'm not exactly fine with it, but I think that the government should not come in and tell you how you're to do with what you're to do with your private property, unless, say, with your private property you start physically harming them and whatnot. If you can like kick them off your property wherever you want, and whatever happens outside of the property, your property is not solely responsible for you
But you
or
do
of you.
realize that part of being a business is the fact that you're actually utilizing the public utilities. So I mean, yes, if you are a
Well,
business with no electricity, no plumbing, no water service or whatever, sure, but private property. But if you accept any public service whatsoever, then you should be held to public anti-discrimination laws.
you think that the government should like cut off a person's electricity and water if they are going to deny service based on whatever they want?
No, but I think that you should all at the same time you're falling into the same idea with like with social media. You're basically saying um, that people can be cut off from their service based on their views. You're completely fine with that because it doesn't meet the standard the moral standards of the company, and I think that's wrong because it is too subjective. Does that make sense?
Well, I still don't see as
I mean,
to how
you can,
whether or not a person can do whatever they want with their business is dependent on the fact that they're taking a service. I mean, I guess by principle, I even disagree with the idea of like
public
public
utilities.
pub, public utilities. Yeah, but by principle, anyways.
Well, I mean, uh, then
I'm not so sure of how I
show
feel
your
about that.
principles. Show your principles, man. I'll never see you on the internet again. Congratulations. Uh, uh, you, I understand where you're coming from, but I don't believe you fully thought out the implications of what you're saying.
What I'm saying, I
So
believe.
basically, you're basically saying that you can be denied service because of your from any utility based on the fact that of your political beliefs. I mean, that's basically what this comes down to.
Not really. I don't think I.
How is it
Okay,
not?
the difference is that the public sector has no discrimination. It should not be discriminatory. I mean,
I don't agree.
We're talking about private versus
I
public
don't
sector.
believe. Okay, well, Google is subsidized.
Yeah, and
Facebook
I
is
think those
subsidized.
subsidies should be pulled.
Twitter.
I think
So
those subsidies should be pulled.
are they really a private company? Because they sound like a public company to me.
I guess if you have so many government interventions into a company, like in the way of subsidies and
If
whatnot,
you
then
have any,
somewhat they are publicized. But I think those subsidies should be pulled ultimately. I mean, so whether or not they're
and those
subsidized
subsidies should be refunded before they can regain private company status.
should be refunded.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it then.
And
let's
if you really want to play the,
let's get the.
but yeah, we go through
Well,
all the
actually,
bullshit. Here's the bullshit. Google would not exist today had it not been for government subsidies.
okay,
YouTube would not exist today had it not been for government subsidies. Same thing with
okay,
Twitter. Same thing with Facebook.
okay.
So if if you want to play the private company game, okay, we'll play the private company game. They cannot receive any electricity from outside power sources. They cannot receive any water. They cannot receive any subsidies. You you understand they have to be self-sustaining. Oh,
Well,
by the way,
ultimately,
and the land, they have to own the land too.
ultimately nobody is like forcing these businesses to take the electricity or the water. Well, I guess
Yeah,
okay. Nobody is ultimately forcing Google and whatnot to take the subsidies as well. But it's not like a Google or YouTube or anything like that is giving something back to the government in trade for these subsidies. But when it comes to the utility, I'm giving money in trade for the electricity or the water, for example. So I don't really see subsidies versus utilities as really equivalent. And ultimately, as well,
subsidies are usually given to companies or things that provide services. So even phone companies receive subsidies. Farmers actually receive subsidies, and they are
mm,
done this because they consider to deliver a service to the public. It is in the public good that they exist. So I look at things going on with Twitter and whatnot. I don't believe that they are private companies. They are actually public companies, and the reason why is because first of all, they are publicly traded on the stock exchange. Um, that does take away some of my private business. They are subsidized by the U.S. government, and second of all, they are enjoying protections that do not exist under any other um, company when it comes to the dissemination of information and how they allow it to be published. So they want to claim that they're a platform, but then while they act as a publisher and they want to say, oh, well, no, we should be able to do whatever we want. Well, no, because now what you're doing is you're claiming one thing in one hand and you're doing something with the other. You're being dishonest, first of all. These companies are not platforms. They want to be publishers. If they want to be publishers, that's fine. Regulate whatever you want on on your websites, but you have to be legally held liable as a publisher. You cannot sit there and enjoy the protections of being a platform where you cannot be sued for what content you have and regulate content.
okay. As far as publisher versus platform, by extension, I guess I'll use I'll word it differently. I mean, I don't think there should be any laws pertaining as to whether or not they are a publisher versus platform.
Well, then take that up with your representative because that law has been in existence since the 40s.
Okay, well the Federal Reserve has been existent since I don't know what the fuck it was, the 20s.
I mean, you
That
can like or dislike something. I dislike the fact that Ilhan Omar has children with her brother, but hey, I'm not going to prosecute her for it.
well the Ilhan Omar, that's not a public issue. Well, not a public sector issue whether or not she has kids. That's her own private business ultimately. But the Federal
She's a
Reserve,
public
that's
servant.
the
She's a public
Federal
servant
Reserve,
who willfully broke
the
laws.
Federal Reserve. That was something that was instituted by the government, and now it's a okay. I don't know the full nuances of that, but something like law. You mentioned like that law since the 1940s defining publisher versus platform. That's public sector right there. Like that's publicly made law that is forced upon the people as a whole. Like Ilhan Omar, that's not equivalent to the 1940s law right there.
Well, what you're saying is that laws can, or so are you claiming that laws are obsolete and can't be used?
I'm not saying completely that they're not obsolete. I'm just wondering of which laws should be repealed and which ones can be left in place. Murder, rape, yeah, keep those illegal, but something that is telling you how to run your business and whatnot, I disagree with the existence of those laws. Like the aspect of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, like all the aspects of the 1964 Civil Rights Act that pertain to the public sector, like publicly owned buses. Despite whether or not people in the chat want to say that publicly owned buses shouldn't be a thing, that aside, I don't think public sector property government should be discriminatory towards people based on their race or sexuality or whatnot. But the area that gets invading on the private sector, like you cannot discriminate against your customers and who you want as your customers. That aspect of it, I think, should be repealed as a
I think
libertarian.
that I think you're a little bit more extreme than what I would be, because I believe that certain classes of people need to be somewhat protected from things like that. Because honestly,
I
then
think
you
those
have like
businesses should be.
nationalists saying Jews can't buy here. Then you have all kinds of horrible things going on.
I think
Um,
what action should be taken is that those businesses be boycotted.
God,
Ultimately, like I don't know, it's like
if
80
you live
over
in,
over
if you
eighty
live in a
percent.
diverse area,
What
that
go on?
if you live in a very diverse area, boycotts might work. But let's just say you live in small town nowhere, and you're the only grocery store in town. Okay, now what about if a black individual moves to that area because they took a job and now they can't go to the grocery store? Is that fair? Because they're like, we don't like them damn darkies.
I don't think whether or not something is technically fair or not should there should
No,
be a public policy on that. That's kind of like that's
no,
okay. No offense, no offense. That's almost kind of the same along the lines that Owen McDonald keeps on pulling. Like, is it really fair that these people be richer than these others and be exploiting their labor and so on and so forth?
see
I
now
don't think fairness should
compare
be determined
comparing
that
me
much in public
to
policy.
dumbass like Owen McDonald, who does nothing but moral fag about every little thing. I'm just stating
Yeah.
if you only have one grocery store in the area, you really think okay, open discrimination is completely fine? No, I don't agree with that. I believe there needs to be some protected classes. Now, I don't believe that we need to expand it as far as we have. I believe that we've gone a little bit too far with some of it. But all at the same time, there has to be some protections because there are just outright complete bigots in this world. And you can go, we can boycott it all they want, but hey, if they're the only if they're the only game in town, all your boycott is doing is holding you from being able to get to something you may need.
Hmm. You know, with all this being espoused right now, this makes me recall back the one time that I think you shared in the Aspie Asylum your political compass test results, and you were like center right,
Yeah.
libertarian esque. And I was thinking to myself, okay, I almost want to call bullshit on that. I think he's a little bit further right than that, and that's not necessarily a good or bad thing, by the way. But now that I actually get to dissecting your opinions a little bit more, like, for example, whether or not how much government should be involved in the economy, seems that you're a little bit more center than right on the issue.
I,
If
I
only,
have
if only freaking Cult of Ham could see you right now. You
no,
and him would probably be agreeing a little bit more than you guys think.
I'm
That's
I'm
not
actually more
necessarily
of a
bad.
social liberal. I'm actually more of a social liberal than I am a fiscal liberal. I'm more fiscally conservative, but all at the same time, I do understand that you need certain protections for different people. I mean, it's just the way of the
I
world.
think
I mean, even in Islam, even in Islam, you have as long as they pay the jizya, the people of the book are afforded protections. Those are people who are Jewish and Christian. Now it's not always followed, but even under some of the most oppressive regimes whatsoever, even they acknowledge that certain classes of people need special protections. So, I mean, it's just to live in a civil society. Now, if you want to go full anarcho stupid, okay, well, I can play that game too. I like the might is right thing. I win might is right quite often.
By the way, to everybody, I do not condone that anarcho stupid comment that Sparky said there.
Oh, anarchists are idiots.
I mean, I have a lot of sympathies to ANCAPs as much as I sympathize with them.
I
I
mean,
I disagree with them on a lot of issues, but yeah,
most
I don't think
find in the world they want.
I will say that you, my ANCAP audience, are not stupid. But
Pander, pander, pander.
okay, sure, whatever. Call me a white knight or whatever you want to. I mean,
Uh,
that's me legitimately speaking, though, right there.
well, I mean, if that's the way you feel, I just look at it as ANCAPs and ANCOMs are both idiots. Most of them are like, oh well, we can survive under the NAP. No, you can't, because someone like me will destroy the NAP all day long. I'll shoot you in your head and take all your shit because I think that the
Brother.
people aren't worth shit.
Okay, all of you
I won't live.
make
I
your
won't live by that.
all of you make your comments as you will. I am not going to try to address that, but something that I want to okay, there's something that I kind of want to rewind this conversation to. Oh yeah, the whole socially liberal thing. I think that's the fact that you want a little more government involvement in the economy. That's not technically socially liberal. That's like economically
Well,
liberal more than anything.
that's somewhat economic liberal, but for the most part, I believe that free open range capitalism works to a point. There has to be some regulation. There's anytime you go to extreme left or right, you're wrong, in my opinion. You go to extreme anyway, it's just wrong.
Okay. Okay.
Everything has to be limited.
Uh, what next? Um, I'm anarcho-sympathetic, says Dead Horse. I am. I guess you could say that I am too, Dead Horse. But what was I gonna? There's more subjects I think that I wanted to bring up. Was there anything that you wanted to bring up, talk about, ask, or whatever?
No, I'm still waiting for that one question. I'm sure you have that you're scared to ask because you're
Oh
worried about
no,
the computer takes.
no, I don't. I don't have any questions right now in particular.
I mean, I just I
Although
read some of your chat and I laugh at some of them.
I
But I mean,
guess one of the things that I would ask about is, do you like legitimately think that people who believe in communism don't have a right to life?
yes, I believe they're horrible people and the world is better with them not existing.
Okay, broadcast over. No, I'm joking, but that's still a fucking shitty opinion, dude.
Well, I mean, I'm not here to sit there and garner anyone's sympathy. You're asking my opinion. I'm giving it. Okay, if anyone is a communist, they
Do you
honestly
think they
have
should be
lived the history of
penishade?
communism.
Do you think they
Uh,
should be? Do you think they should be penishade?
yeah, I think everyone should be penis shaved. Uh,
No, no. Do you think that they should be penishade? As in, do you think that people should go out of the like? I want to. Oh god, this is gonna be painful for me. But do you think that people that we should be systematically killing commies, like throwing
no,
them out of helicopters and so forth?
no, that's ridiculous. But
Okay, do you think that if somebody do you think if somebody was to go out of the way and kill somebody who was a commie, do you think that murderer should be held accountable to their actions and thrown in jail maybe even?
yes,
Well
I
then logically conclusive, you do believe that commies have a right to life.
believe that everyone has a right to life, but honestly, if a commie gets killed, I don't care. I couldn't care less. I
And
ser-
yeah, yeah, and I'm sure the commies don't care less if a Nazi gets killed. But it seems that logically concluding, you do believe that commies do have a right to life. Just you don't care ultimately if they do die.
yeah, pretty much. I believe everyone has a
Okay.
right to life. I just don't believe that commies really count as anything. If they die, I don't care.
Well, I still think it's a shitty opinion, but it's at least not as psychopathic as I originally found it. You were just using sloppy language at first there.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Really sloppy, for fuck's sake.
No, and I do that sometimes just for fun. There's you don't understand how much I enjoy setting things on fire and watching it all burn around me.
Mm,
It's really it's a good time, good wholesome family entertainment.
family. Oh yeah, family entertainment.
Something everyone can enjoy.
We still have about like 24 minutes of time.
They
Uh,
and see now the whole Nazi thing. I think Nazi is overused. Um,
I can agree. Like Sargon of Akkad was referred to as a Nazi
I've
at
been
one point.
referred to as a Nazi, and I'm like, how can you be a Zionist and a Nazi at the same time? I don't know how that works.
I think Ben Shapiro has been accused of being Nazi sympathetic or
Yeah, yeah,
even a
yeah.
full-on
An
Nazi as well.
Orthodox Jew is a Nazi all of a sudden. I I look at those who scream Nazi have no idea what a fascist is.
Mm.
Uh, what the left calls for today is generally fascism. They want government controlling all the speech. They want all that. Oh no, we need to be able to dehumanize, deperson people like what they did with Alex Jones. I think Alex Jones is a fucking laugh. If I want a good laugh, I'll honestly put on some Alex Jones and listen to him talk about how the turning the fucking frogs gay. And
You know, you do resemble a lot like Alex Jones yourself.
uh,
I'm just gonna
I
say.
listen to it. I listen to it, and I laugh my ass off. Um,
No, I'm talking about physically speaking. You
oh
resemble a lot
yeah,
of Alex
I'm a fat
Jones.
fuck. I get it. Um, that's what happens when you destroy your body in service to your country. Yeah, I'm a disabled vet.
You're a
Who-
disabled vet. In
Yeah,
what way, if I may ask?
um, PTSD, TBI, bad shoulders, knees, legs. Yeah, I'm pretty fucked up from the flow up.
Okay, the
Uh,
bad knees would explain a bit, just in of
yeah,
itself.
um, I mean it is what it is. Um, yeah, I can't exercise like I used to. Um, at the end of the day, my back and my feet are killing me. Um, I can barely walk every day. That is my life. I'm okay with that. Um, I mean, I did it willingly. Um, but when you look at what's going on, um, the left is turning fascist only because they don't understand what fascism is. They call everything right of Stalin's left nut fascism, and that's fucking wrong. Um, the complete any extreme is bad.
Yeah, I can
Extreme
agree. Well, okay.
extreme
Actually,
uh, extreme capitalism is wrong. Um,
actually, I was I said I can agree right there, but then thinking again on it, like I would think that it's disagreeable. Like any extreme belief, in my opinion, is disagreeable. But outright bad, that saying that using the word bad almost implies that you think there's an inherent immorality. I think that
no,
extremism, like
I
being
don't
extreme
think.
with your ideology, is bad.
I think
More specifically,
I think you conflate morality. Honestly, I look at a
yeah,
lot
I
of
don't.
things that's completely amoral.
You think
I
what is
really
amoral?
I think a lot of things as amoral. I don't think of the morality of it because
No, I think so too.
if I thought morality was important, then homosexuality should probably be purged, and I don't think that. Um,
Some
Because
people will think that homosexuality is a moral good, but I think it's morally neutral as well. Thus, the
I
government
think it
should
serves no
ultimately
purpose.
should get. Thus, the government should get not involved at all.
Yeah, I think it really serves no purpose, and it doesn't really matter. Moral implications aside,
But
I don't see a need to bring morality into it because there is no moral stance when it comes to someone's sexuality. There's some things that are just fucking wrong, um, but I don't think that's based solely on morality. I believe most of that has based on consent purposes and stuff.
but I want to like bring back to the whole bad, saying that it was bad. I don't know. I mean, hmm. When somebody says that something is bad, I don't always think that they are automatically thinking that it is immoral. Like for example, somebody to say that um, Terminator 5, Terminator Genesis is bad. It's not necessarily immoral, but
Well,
you go talking about ideologies, you call
I think
something
illegal
bad.
immigration is bad, and that's not a moral standard. That's just a I'm a nationalist. I believe that a country has a right to exist on its own and it has a right to maintain its own borders. Um, if you don't buy into that, okay, you don't believe in nations. Um, I believe that a country has a right to limit who can and cannot come into their country. It's about sovereignty. Um, when I can sit there and say that reparations is bad, and some people will go, "Oh, well, there's people who were enslaved." Okay, show me one, please.
It's
Show me someone. Show me
it's
someone who was directly enslaved, and then maybe we can talk about the idea of reparations. But until that exists, which it doesn't, fuck off. Um,
yeah.
I mean, wow.
But by the way, I want to tell everybody that I wasn't saying that an extreme ideology is not automatically bad, but I'm saying extremism, like extreme rhetoric and partisanry. That's what I mean by technically extremism. I think that is bad, which there are some center esque type people who can be extreme about their own beliefs, but their ideology isn't so extreme. Like Secular Hawk, for example. I'll say he's very extreme about his beliefs, but I don't think, or at least when I first got
No,
acquainted to him, he wasn't very extreme in his. He
if you
wasn't.
don't suck cock, you're not good enough for secular hawk. That's how he goes.
If what?
If you don't suck cock, you're not good enough for secular hawk. Uh, that's why I have firm questions about S Man at times, but hey, to each their own.
I don't think he's not really extreme in his beliefs. Generally speaking, he's not extreme in his rhetoric either.
No,
Generally
S
speaking,
Man
at
is
least.
that secular hawk would get extreme here and there, but not.
Yeah, he's extreme in his rhetoric, but not very extreme in his beliefs. Except
I
for
get extreme in my rhetoric just because I like to watch people burn the world around me and laugh at them. I
okay,
mean, people take shit way too seriously.
so I guess just as random questions because I don't really have any subjects I want to touch on lined up. What do you think of like Sargon of Akkad nowadays?
What about
Like,
him? Some of his opinions are interesting to listen to. I don't necessarily subscribe to all of them, but it's a good intellectual exercise at times. Sometimes it's too predictable. Um,
see,
but
thing that I had with Sargon of Akkad was the whole Mr. Medicare drama, calling him a child groomer and whatnot.
yeah. Let's say he overstepped. Jim is many things, but a child groomer is not one of them. Um, yeah, Medicare's an edge lord. He's the original edge lord type person. He does not give a fuck. I think sometimes Jim is those who befriend Jim and consider him a friend are an idiot, especially on the internet because he is literally setting you up to make fun of you later.
Hmm.
I mean, look at what he did to Andy and Tonka and all the others. He literally saves things up to later set it on fire and dance around it. Um,
Well, you say he's making fun of it, so, but it's just all in sarcastic fun and games. Like he's not doing anything serious about it, is
no,
he?
no, Jim is never doing anything serious.
Like say for example the mundane Matt situation. That I think his commentary was totally serious, but something like Deviants, his Deviant series, that seemed to have been more
Everything,
sarcasm and fun and games and seriousness.
everything he does is based to joke. That is all he does,
Oh.
and you don't have to agree. Now he'll call something out, and he's serious when he's calling it out, but the whole time he's making fun of it, and he's not
No,
calling
I
it
can
out.
agree. But you can give serious commentary on an issue, but
But he's not
make
doing it
jokes
because
at
he
the same
cares.
time.
That's what he's not doing it because he cares. He does it because he wants to mock. He's doing it strictly for comedic purposes. I firmly believe that Jim Medeker is amoral. He does not care. He does not care about the morality of anything. He just likes to take the piss out of everything.
So he doesn't care about pedophilia when he was like arguing with that one pedophile.
No, he thinks it's wrong. At least I assume he thinks it's wrong. But all at the same
I mean,
time, he is
look at the
doing it to make
arguing
fun of
there.
it. But he's doing it to make fun of him. I,
Right.
I don't really think I don't think he actually cares. Like he may have a moral stance on it, but he's not talking with these people about his morality. He's talking with people for his entertainment. And
Well,
there's a difference. It's just like when I go, the LGBT community supports pedophilia, and the world, the everyone around me starts laughing, starts raising hell, and I'm sitting there laughing. I am literally doing the same thing. I know the LGBT community as a whole does not support pedophilia, but
what?
I do that overly broad generalization because I'm playing the game. The game is
You
essentially
kind of made a
every
180 just right there.
well, no, it's I know every single person in the LGBT does not support pedophilia, but the fact that they will not stand up to the mainstream is showing they're complicit.
You
But
see, you never like meant. I don't think you've ever annotated the complicity
yes, I was
necessarily.
talking about the complicity. The entire that was the at the very beginning. That's all I was talking about was how they were being
I'm
complicit.
talking like more specifically over Twitter. You've never used the word complicit in your
No,
phrasing.
no,
You
because
you
I
you use the word support.
yes, and I use the word I use it on purpose to frame it that way to watch everyone spurg out and laugh at them.
Okay.
It's literally a joke. The LGBT community, not my stance on them.
Anyway, we've already tackled that subject a little bit earlier in this stream, but and we're gonna have to like agree to disagree on whether or not Mr. Medicare really has any principles. But I guess something that I wanted to ask a little bit earlier but forgot, but now I remembered. Were you always did you always have the current opinions that you have right now?
No, no, my opinions have changed over time. I
Well,
was
I'm as a generality, like were you ever like left of center?
yes, yes, I used to be extremely left of center.
Hmm.
Um, I, what is it? Wise man once said, if you're not a liberal when you're young, you don't have a heart. But if you're not a conservative when you're older, you don't have a brain.
Hmm.
It's just you don't have to be extreme on any side. But no, at one time I was full on communist supporting and everything else. But over the years, seeing how things actually work in the real world, my opinions have changed. And I mean, I was even more extreme right for a while there, and then I've softened. It's because if your opinions are the exact same throughout your entire life, you have never interacted with anyone, or you've lived a complete, or you're just around you live in a bubble.
I will say that I lived in kind of an echo chamber when I was a lot younger, but getting on the internet, my opinions have changed a little bit more. Like, I was like, say, in the Rush Limbaugh camp of conservatism at one point, which was kind of not very intellectually honest. I will say, like, he barely ever calls out Republicans whenever they are failing. And then I
Well,
get to listening to Mark Levin. He calls out Republicans a little bit more, and then I lean
I
a little
love
bit more libertarian,
I
more and
love
more.
Mark Levin. Mark
Yeah.
Levin is great. If you really want to, if you wanted to know who the thought leaders are that I tend to think of, and I do like Ben Shapiro to a point. I don't agree with him fully on his stance on Iran currently, um, but
Yeah,
overall,
that
I
was a goof up on his part, but go on.
no, he's a hawk. He's a war hawk, and I mean, I used to be one. I man, when I was in the military, I loved war. War was great. But then the more I started digging into it, the more I started paying attention to what was going on. Um, yeah, no, we generally wait.
Again, have OBS Studio reconnection successful. Okay, go back to what you were talking about. Sorry.
Alrighty. Yeah, no, I, I used to be a war hawk. I used to think war was an overall good for the economy and everything else, but then I just realized that I was being manipulated, uh, pretty much to make other people um, rich. Um, the more I look at it, I think we need to not expend so much blood and treasure for every little thing. This calling off of the Iranian strike, I thought generally might be an overall good, but I think all it's really doing is going to postpone the war that is going to happen. Um, but hell, I called Syria about 3 years ago. I'm like, this is the beginning of World War III. We just hadn't realized it yet. Um, and ultimately, Iran is the reason because of little things like trade. Um,
Hmm.
what happened? What happened with the mining of those tankers?
Actually,
Yeah.
now that I think about it, I do kind of quickly want to ask you about this. I'm not going to debate it much because we're running out of time. But what's your opinion on tariffs and free trade?
I prefer free trade, but tariffs are not a bad means to coerce other countries into free trade agreements.
Hmm.
And
I
that's what Donald Trump is using tariffs for right now as we speak. And
think somebody mentioned to me that the reason why Trump is instituting tariffs is as a counter tariff to China's tariffs on us, something along those
well,
lines. See, I don't
okay,
know. I don't know if I agree with even counter tariffs. Just to annotate to everybody, but that's a bit of a new narrative to this whole tariff argument that I just now
well,
hearing. That I'm just now
the
hearing.
people like S Man speaks. He talks about how he hates tariffs and everything. What he doesn't understand is those
Well,
tariffs
I'd say I
existed.
do too.
Uh,
Go
it,
on.
that's fine, but tariffs existed against U.S. products in China for decades. Um,
Hmm.
honestly, I like the idea of using tariffs to push forward free trade agreements. And people are saying, oh, well, the farmers are suffering. Yes, they are suffering right now, and it's going to be a short amount of time because right now, China's economy is collapsing because of those tariffs.
You know, this kind of, that kind of does explain as to why I don't hear a lot about Chinese-based companies doing business in the United States, but I always hear about U.S.-based companies doing business in China and India, like Walmart having their food plants and whatnot in
Yes,
Asia. But that explains why there's no Chinese companies doing business in the U.S. because they be tariffing their own countries from doing that shit.
exactly. And so a lot of people are looking at it. You can't be a free trade absolutist. You've got to understand that sometimes you have to employ coercion to get what you want in the end, and that's what Donald Trump is doing. Now, you may not agree
Here's the
on
problem.
methods of doing it, but we're actually seeing results where we haven't previously. So Doing the exact same thing over and over doesn't work. That's actually, a lot of people say that's the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results, and that's what things like what S-Man advocate for. I, I don't think Donald Trump is an economic genius or anything like that, but honestly, he is doing different ideas that have worked. Our trade deficit with Europe has gone down substantially because of tariffs. What is going on with Mexico? With they're actually starting to enforce their own immigration policies because of tariffs. Okay, Donald Trump is using economic coercion to get his way. I can't complain, and the U.S. government is actually making money off of it.
Okay, yeah, here's what I'll say on that point. The little catch. You mentioned free trade, absolutism, and coercion. Like, that's kind of where the main issue is with me, I guess, is coercing our own companies saying, hey, you cannot like build a plant in this foreign country and so forth. That would be where the
It's
bit of
not
snag
coercing
is.
them. No, it's not coercing them. If they want to, if they want to manufacture goods in a foreign country because they can get lower wages to increase their profit margin, okay. But they run the risk of tariffs doing that. Who
Well,
cares?
yeah, it's technically a tax, I
Okay,
would
and
say.
it's not a tax on domestic goods. It's a tax on foreign goods.
Okay, yeah, foreign goods that
I don't care
citizen
who
is
owns it.
manufacturing.
Don't care who owns it. Care about where it was made. America first.
And oh, Vector Crow, shut up. But what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, I do overall agree that I prioritize the rights of our own fellow citizens over a foreigner. But ultimately, I don't believe in like, well, I'm not mean to imply anything towards you, but ultimately I don't agree with the idea of just willy-nilly infringing on the rights of foreigners, foreign citizens more specifically.
Um, Foreign citizens do not have rights and do not have American rights.
They don't have
But
American rights, but I guess it's
it
the
doesn't cover them.
I guess it's the more of the right to life, like more of a moral, natural right than
I
anything
just
else.
don't care.
I
Foreign,
wouldn't.
foreign countries mean nothing to me.
Okay,
All I care about is America.
I wouldn't say that I care necessarily. And by the way, what I well, I wouldn't say that I don't care necessarily, and whether or not I do or don't care doesn't necessarily determine as to whether I think that we should intervene, in, say, Saddam Hussein if he was to kill some Iraqis when he was still alive, for example. Um, but ultimately, I would frame it as I don't not care about foreigners, but I care for fellow citizens more than foreigners.
Yeah, I don't give two shits about foreign individuals. Any atrocity that happens in other countries now, I could not care less. Um, what's going on in the Sudan right now with the forced rape and everything else, that's just showing you culture is not equal. Um, what happens in Saudi Arabia, I could not care less. Um, and some people would say, "Oh, well, that's kind of an isolationist view." Well, I mean, it's kind of realistic. I couldn't care less.
On this point,
Um,
on this point,
Red Feather says that I have confusing views, and that's what centrism looks like. It's not necessarily along any ideological spectrum.
I would kind of disagree with you being a dead set center. At most, you'd be uh, a
Well, I'm a
center
right
right
leaning.
winger, a
Yeah,
center right winger.
I'm a right leaning centrist, but I don't hold views along any one particular ideology. I do lean more to the right, but centrism doesn't mean that you follow any particular views.
Okay. Um, Damn it, forgot what I was about to say again. I need to pull up the notepad more often to write down what I need to ask, what I want to ask. Actually, we ought to be wrapping up here soon. And I will say, by the way, everybody, that I don't necessarily have an opinion on whether or not the LGBT, just me personally, I don't think I addressed what Sparky said a little bit earlier, but I don't necessarily have the opinion. I cannot solidly say that they are complicit, that the LGBT community is complicit. In fact, I would say that overall, if pedophilia comes across them, they are non-complicit to them, but it's just not made publicly well known to the point that it can be used as evidence or anything like
And
that.
my argument is the fact that that's not publicly well known is the problem. That's really all it is. That's
Well,
all it boils down to.
that
The
seems to be
fact that they
that
don't want to sit there and talk
seems
about it publicly, that's just
that
saying that they're
seems
complicit.
that seems to be more of a problem of the mainstream media more than them themselves,
Well,
whether
no,
or not
because
those
they
are
allow the
publicly known.
mainstream media to speak for them. That's
But
the problem. They allow the mainstream media to speak for them. That's where the complicitness comes from. If you're going to sit there and go, we support all these articles and stuff about pro LGBT, and then not pay attention to what they're talking about is pedophilia, they're complicit. They are willfully allowing that to happen, allowing them to be represented in that way, and therefore it's not necessarily an endorsement, but it's not an endorsement. See what I mean? If something really appalls
uh,
you will stand up and you'll screech against it. Just like that retard that when Donald Trump was elected, screamed no into the void. Okay? You don't see that happening. You don't see Carlos Mazza spending 3 days raising hell over about how pedophiles are invading the LGBT. You don't see any major LGBT activist, speaking out against it. So if you allow the mainstream media to control the narrative, which is happening, the mainstream media has painted the LGBT as pro-pedophilia.
that's a fault on the media.
But it's the fault of the activists not standing up to the media.
Okay, to anybody that is like just tuning in right now, we kind of addressed this a little bit earlier in the stream. I do not know if there are like any minor facets to pedophilia versus the LGBT community and whatnot. There might be some small facets to address later on, but I cannot think of any right now that have not been addressed.
You're right on.
But anyway, that'll be a battle for the future if it goes happening.
Was there a battle?
That is if it happens and when it happens. But we have officially passed the 2-hour mark, so I think we'll be wrapping up here soon. But so, Sparky, have anything to say to the audience before we leave?
No, it was real. It was fun.
It's fun. Real blood sports, right?
No. This ain't blood sports at all.
I guess not really.
We weren't even calling each other names. Oh, hold on. Am I supposed to be mad at you? Are this?
I don't know. Yeah, you seem kind of frustrating when we were at the heat of the pedophilia versus LGBT debate of this stream.
That's just me. That's just me activating, doing my activist shit.
I mean, we tried our best, I guess, to refrain from calling each other names, but
I don't have to call anyone names. I like to make fun of it all.
Anyway, so to everyone watching, thank you for tuning in. But till next time, this has been AircraftSparky, and I think the next person that I'll interview will likely be Lapis, the effeminate degenerate.
Oh God, you're gonna have that dude who wears a blanket on his head come on?
Fuck off. Anyway, sorry, I'm on fair terms with Lapis, but she doesn't like you, and you don't like her,
You
and
can't wear a towel on your head and claim that you're female, and then live your life as a boy. I don't buy it.
and anyway. So to everybody watching, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. God bless.